Hello everyone, welcome to Lukman IAS. Today we are going to have the Hindu analysis of 18th February 2021. So let us see which are the important articles straight away from today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the important articles for mains purpose and for prelims purpose. We have segregated them. Now let us take a review of all these articles, how they relate to our examination, what is given, what is discussed in those articles. First, for mains related, page number 6, editorial page. The poor state of Indian state. So the article is giving insights into how government is not able to provide, or we can say that the essential services to the poor people. At the same time, it is not able to manage the change that is required or to be implemented. The kind of COVID-19 pandemic last one year, India along with the world has seen, and the change that is required in the country, that has not been, let's say, supported by the bureaucratic setup, civil servants. At the same time, the politicians which are required to have the unified identity. So there is divisive politics going on. And third thing, the corporate sector is only focusing on the profit motive and not its social responsibility. So the article is giving very good insights into what is the need of the hour, and it is providing the way forward also. Okay, so from governance perspective and essay perspective, at the same time, those who are having PSIR subject, optional subject, political science, so the article is directly relating to their syllabus. Next, again on editorial page, an ambiguous levy. So here the context of the article is that the government has withdrawn the tax benefits to those contributions to provident funds. So employees provident fund, that fund, the kind of contributions that has been done by the people, so it has limited that the 2.5 lakhs. Okay, so the limit is very important here. We have to understand what are the issues involved and how this limit is also the problematic. Okay, and why the government has come up with such limit. Okay, so here from economy perspective, we'll look into that article. Government denies link between Char Dham project and floods. So the recent Uttarakhand floods and the Char Dham project, the widening of those highways linking mini Char Dham, okay, or we call it as Chota Char Dham. Those four places, which are these four places, and what are the Char Dhams of the country. So from culture perspective and geography mapping location, surely, as we have seen in the prelims paper analysis of 2020, in that we had told you that the government, sorry, not government, the UPSC is asking the culturally important places and linking with whether they are located in particular state and whether they are located along certain river banks. Some kind of, let's say, match the following questions are being asked. So we'll understand from that perspective. Nilgiri Mountain Railway toy train resumed after 10 months. Okay, so which are the mountain railways, toy trains in India? This is from heritage perspective. So some of these toy trains have been given the World Heritage status by UNESCO. So that's why we have to know from, let's say, miscellaneous perspective as well as the heritage part. This becomes important for prelims examination. Okay, so let us see one by one these articles in detail now. The poor state of Indian state. So the article is written by Arun Maira, the former Planning Commission member. So he is focusing here that how the present government is not able to ensure that poor people does not face difficulties, especially during the COVID-19 period. Okay, so it is giving some very good insights into what do you mean by strong state and how the strong state is built. Okay, so we have to understand that there is the fine difference between strong state and absolute state. Okay, so absolute state means which is having huge powers and it does not give the people of the country powers. Rather, it exercises on its own the arbitrary powers, we can say that, and the sole focus of that state is to ensure law and order in the society. However, this is the part of the Thomas Hobbes, and he gave that social contract theory. However, the strong state is not necessarily the arbitrary state or exercising those absolute powers. Rather, strong state is that kind of power which has three qualities here, or three aspects. One is they are built with support from the people. So there is some kind of, let's say, cultural identity, religious identity, or the people are having the unified identity and the political leaders are rallying these people towards one certain aim. Okay, so people support government. This is first. They have strong administrative machinery to provide stability and deliver public services. That means the bureaucratic role of bureaucracy in the country. This bureaucratic setup is very important. First, to provide the stability to the government, stability to the society, and second, delivering public services. And third aspect, it is talking about they have the managerial ability to shape and implement changes. Now, what do you mean by here changes? So, as we know that India is developing country and Indian society is continuously going through change. Change, we will say that, from traditional society to the modern society, more liberal society, we can say that. And for that purpose, here the bureaucracy as well as the political executives, the leaders, they need to have that managerial ability to shape the change and implement the change. Okay, so if we talk about the COVID-19, there is a substantial change in the administrative setup after COVID-19, and even economy and overall societal setup also. So to implement such kind of change, the managerial ability is required with bureaucratic setup or bureaucratic, let's say, civil servants as well as the political executives. Okay, so these are three important attributes, or we can say aspects of strong state. Now let us discuss whether at present we have them in India or why we do not have them. Okay, so first aspect is the support of the people. So at present we have to understand that though the government is majoritarily elected government, however the support of the people does not mean that only they are elected by the majority of the people. Rather, here there is need of continuous support. So that does not mean only 5-yearly support for general elections. Rather, the continuous support, and that kind of continuous support surely comes from when the political leaders are able to rally the people of the country on the basis of, we can say that, either their race or religion, or let's say having the unified identity. Okay, so ethnic, racial or religious, that is the shared identity of the people. Okay, however, the people's identity is not formed by legal constitutions. Okay, so we have to understand that India is the diversified country in terms of religions, caste, or we can say that races also. So on the basis of that, there are many such divisions, and therefore the political leaders cannot have people's support on the basis of such shared identity. So here the article is providing that if Indians must be united to support a strong state, it must be around modern inclusive India as, let's say, dreamed by Indian Constitution. Okay, as imagined by Indian Constitution. So the constitutional morality, constitutional values, and those, let's say, ideals, on the basis of those ideals, the government or the, let's say, the state can bring such unity and support by the people on the basis of constitutional ideals. Okay, and not on the basis of, let's say, religion or caste. Because in India, even we have the majority of Hindu religion, within Hindu religion there are many such caste divisions, and therefore there cannot be shared identity and the support by the people on the basis of such shared identity on the basis of religion. Okay, Second aspect here is administrative machinery. So here at present we know about the Indian bureaucracy and its state. So the Indian bureaucracy has the colonial legacy, British legacy, and surely the British bureaucracy was solely responsible for maintaining law and order and stability to the government, rather than let's say bringing any change, shaping any change or implementing any change. So the third aspect of strong state is not being supported by present Indian bureaucracy. Even our Prime Minister has complained that bureaucrats seems not to take care, not to care for the country's progress as much as entrepreneurs do. Okay, so this is the situation at present, and therefore the bureaucrats need to change their mindset. They need to act as a private companies managers, solely let's say thinking about the progress of the company. So here also they should think about progress of the country. Okay, and third, management of change. This is very important because unmanaged change can cause chaos. Simply we can give the example of lockdown that was imposed last year. It was unmanaged, we can say. Though we had to bring the change, let's say in the management, in the administration of the society or the overall country, but that was unmanaged. Okay, so that creates the chaos in the country, right? So that's why there is need of management of change, and we can say that also the implementation of change, and that requires good managerial ability among the people. Now, as a way forward, how to bring a strong state in India, or strong Indian state, we can say. The first and foremost thing is we need the government or the state should ensure that poor people receive all the necessary services. Okay, so yes, state must perform primarily for poorest citizen for the economic growth to be equitable and sustainable, and not for investors in the corporations. So surely the focus should be on equitable and sustainable economic growth, right? So reducing the poverty should be the focus along with economic growth. Second, pandemic has revealed the chronic inability of Indian state to take care of its poorest citizens, and therefore the scorecard, that is the performance indicator, should not be only GDP. The performance indicator should not be only GDP, rather it should include the economic justice, that is the distributive justice. We can say that the distributive in a sense that the progressive taxation that we adopt, and reducing rich poor divide, the socialist principle, we can say. In environmental justice and sustainability and improvement of the dignity of all citizens must be measured too, right? So these should be used as the indicators of progress and development, and not only economic GDP. Fine. And in addition to them, we have to build a strong and good state. And how do we build any strong and good state? So by building strong three pillars. What are these three pillars? First is good politicians, right? Good politicians, first thing. Second, strong bureaucracy. And third, good corporates. So what the article is saying, that for strong state, the politicians should be unified, having the unified cause. There should not be divisive politics going on all the time in the country. Second, bureaucracy. So civil servant, public servant, they should be acting as a, let's say, private managers, or the managers who are working in the private companies, solely focusing on efficiency and profit also. Okay, so welfare of that company is there, or we can say largely the objective. So here also the bureaucrats, as a CEO of the government, they should be focusing on these aspects also, along with ensuring the public services and services, especially having the objective of welfare state, implementing that. Okay, And the third is corporates. So the corporates or those, let's say, large companies and their owners, they should not only be focusing on earning the profits and growing their own let's say companies, rather they should be also focusing on creating opportunities, okay, and not only just let's say acting as a philanthropers. They should be focusing on creating opportunities for more and more employment also in the country. Fine. So this should be focused. So together, political leaders, administrators and business leaders, they should work together to build a strong state in the country. Okay. So they should work for the common people, good for all citizens, especially poorest. So you can attempt such kind of question. The pandemic has revealed the chronic inability of Indian state to take care of its poorest citizens. Comment. Discuss measures required to build an Indian state that is good for all citizens, especially poorest. So whatever the way forward that has been given here in this article, you can directly use here, discuss the measures. And pandemic has revealed the chronic inability of Indian state to take care of its poorest citizens. You talk about you provide certain facts about the migrant laborers and how they face the problems during the lockdown time period. You talk about the kind of, let's say, the hunger and food insecurity faced by the people, poor people during the pandemic time period. Oh, right. So how the state has failed to ensure protection to the poorest citizens in the country? Yes, you can mention certain facts here, and then you can talk about the measures required from this article. You can draw this. For strong state, you require all these three to work together for welfare of all citizens, especially poorest citizens. Fine. So from governance perspective, surely at the same time the discussion is very much relevant for essay topics also and PSIR, those who are having optional PSIR. Yes. Next article, an ambiguous levy. So here it is talking about the proposed tax and the and withdrawal of those benefits which were provided earlier for interest generated on the contributions for provident fund. Okay, so the government has come up with the proposal of withdrawing the tax exemptions on interest income accrued on provident fund accounts arising out of employee contributions exceeding 2.5 lakh in a previous year in that fund on or after 1st April 2021. Right. So this is the provision and the context of this article. And yes, surely why the government is or has come up with this provision is that many such corporates and let's say those high net worth individuals, they are using this particular, we can say that provision, to avoid the taxes, Why? Because there was a complete, let's say, tax free provisions here, tax exemptions for contributions in provident fund, and the revenue department has pointed out that tax will only affect the small group, high net worth individuals, the 100 largest employees, we can say provident fund EPF accounts had combined balance of over 2000 crore rupees. Only 100 largest, let's say, provident fund accounts. From this we can understand the interest that has been generated on those accounts, those contributions was going tax free. For this purpose, the government has provide the ceiling here of 2.5 lakhs in previous year. So surely it is in no one's case that the social security scheme for formal sector workers should become investment haven for well-heeled corporate top brass. So yes, the idea is very well having good intention. However, there are some issues now. Yes, earlier also such kind of let's say provisions were given. For example, in budget 2016-17, it proposed to tax 60% of EPF balances at the time of withdrawal, but the government backtracked after the backlash. Now it has covered even government employees contributions into GPF, but left National Pension Scheme NPS investment over 2.5 lakh a year untouched. So NPS investments have left untouched. There is no ceiling here. However, even the government GPF, government provident fund contributions, they are also included in this provision. Now, what are the issues involved here? The issues involved here is that the 2.5 lakh ceiling is not, let's say, good here in terms of, let's say, common citizens, the common people who are contributing to this provident fund. Even, let's say, normal saving of 21,000 per month towards their retirement is going to be taxed now. Okay, the threshold proposed to exclude so-called high net incomes worth people appears to be very low, this 2.5 lakh, right? So that's why common people, especially those who are saving for their retirement in this provident fund, they are going to face the we can say problem here, and those who are contributing more than this 21,000 now going to face the tax, okay, on the interest generated and overall tax. Now the word in previous year, one suggests that this will be type of retroactive tax. That means whatever the contribution that have been done already in last 1 year, now government has come the government is going to tax that. So that means the people were not aware about that the government can tax that contribution. This is the retroactive tax. Retroactive tax means it is going to the back date, last 1 year it is saying that. So that means those people who had let's say invested in last 1 year, those who were unaware about such kind of provision may come in future. So they are let's say criticizing this provision as a retroactive tax. This is not at all good for any country, any government, retroactive tax, right? So surely the government can say that in coming next year the government is going to tax such kind of contributions above 2.5 lakh or the interest, we can say that. Okay, so surely this is the example of retroactive tax, and it is criticized on the basis of that. And third, it is also not clear when and how the tax is to be paid, whether at the retirement or each year that provident fund rate is announced. Okay, so this is also not clear. The nitty-gritties are not clear. How this provision is going to be implemented, in what manner it is going to be implemented is not clear, and that's why it is criticized. So that means the aim of the proposal is good, objective is good, rather the how it is going to be implemented, that is the process, is not clear, not transparent at present, and that's why it is being criticized. So ultimately we can say that while the goal of targeting high net worth in individuals using the PF savings, provident fund savings, to avoid taxation is laudable. However, the center should consider recalibrating the arithmetic and operational details of this tax. Arithmetic means 2.5 lakh, that threshold, and operational details means how it is going to be implemented. Bring more clarity on that part. So yes, from economy perspective, those developments which are in news, the government tax proposals which are having, let's say, impact on the common people, especially the middle income people. So that is very important. So this is the analysis of that proposal. Fine? Yes. Next, from prelims perspective, especially the articles, government denies link between Char Dham project and floods. So recent Uttarakhand floods that happened, the government says that the Char Dham project is not linked with that, those floods. So yes, surely many such environmental activists are criticizing the developmental projects, the road building and infrastructure development that is impacting the fragile nature of Himalayan ecology, and the floods that happened recently is one of the reason for that. Okay, so or we can say the manifestation of that, not reason, we can say, right? So however, the government has said that it is not linked, the Char Dham project and the floods that happened recently in Rishiganga Valley. Okay, so what is important for us is that project, 899-kilometer project, the highway, let's say expansion project is that it connects shrines of Gangotri, Yamunotri, Kedarnath and Badrinath in Garhwad, Himalaya. So Garhwad, Himalaya in Uttarakhand, let's say Uttarakhand state. So what is this project? What are the Char Dhams? First let us try to understand. So Char Dhams or the 4 abodes is the set of 4 pilgrimage sites in India, especially according to Hindu mythology. It is said that the person who visits all these Char Dhams gets moksha. Okay, so for that purpose the people in their, let's say, older ages, they have this Char Dham pilgrimage, we can say that. So it comprises of Badrinath, Dwarka, Puri and Rameshwaram. These are the Char Dhams. What we learn about this project, they are the Chota Char Dham. Okay, so the small circuit in Uttarakhand of 4 pilgrimage sites, that is Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath, Badrinath. They are Chota Char Dham in Uttarakhand, and one of that site is, let's say, Char Dham, Badrinath, which is common to Chota Char Dham as well as the Char Dham. So on the map of India, you can see here the Char Dham map at or we can say that the 4 corners of India: Badrinath, Dwarka in Gujarat, Puri in Odisha and Rameshwaram in Tamil Nadu. You can see the locations. It exactly forms or at right angle also, like this. Okay, these are the Char Dhams, and the very important according to Hindu mythology, we can say that. And Chota Char Dham and the proposed that Char Dham highway. What is this Char Dham highway? You can see the locations first: Yamunotri, Gangotri, Badrinath and Kedarnath. And they are being connected through this infrastructure road project, we can say that. And recently the expansion of these highways is undertaken by the government, and that's why it was also in news that the environmental activists were criticizing that such kind of highway expansion is taking toll on Himalayan ecology. Okay, and it will aggravate the natural disasters if any in future in Uttarakhand. Okay, so location of this Char Dham, Chota Char Dham in Uttarakhand and Badrinath, the major Char Dham location here. Fine. Okay. So from prelims perspective, yes, such kind of question can be asked: which of the following is not part of Chota Char Dham pilgrimage circuit? Right. So try to attempt such kind of questions. Build a, let's say, glossary, or we can say that all the questions we are discussing in every lecture. Surely after 1 year, this will be a very well let's say collection of all these questions for further revisions before your examination, prelims examination. So try to attempt this question. You can provide the answer in the comment box of this video, and let me again tell you that the PDF of this discussion or the video is provided in the link of this video. Try to download that and have let's say repository of all these resources with you, and continuously revising this will surely get more chances for cracking this prelims examination. Yes. Now one article on showcase page number 12, that the Nilgiri Mountain Railway toy train has been resumed. It's let's say running after 10 months. Okay, so last 10 months during COVID-19 it was stopped, the service was stopped. So what is important for us, our examination, prelims examination, from heritage perspective, which are these important 5 mountain toy trains in India, and some of them have been recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Site. So this becomes important for us, and in which state they are located and which places they connect, that is also important. So first one, Darjeeling Himalayan Railways, UNESCO World Heritage Site. Surely it is located in West Bengal. Okay, so this is let's say a very important example. Yes, actually this is incorrectly written here. This should be here. It connects Darjeeling to New Jalpaiguri. Okay, so this is from West Bengal. Kalka Shimla Railway, UNESCO World Heritage Site again, and Himachal Pradesh, the state location, and very famous to reach the Shimla through this picturesque, let's say to have the view. This is very famous toy train, Kalka Shimla Railway, and this Kalka location is very well connected with Indian Railway network. Okay, then Nilgiri Mountain Railway, again it is UNESCO World Heritage Site located in Tamil Nadu. So this was in news actually at present. Matheran Hill Railway, Matheran to Neral. Okay, so this is also important toy train in Maharashtra. Matheran is the hill station tourist point in Maharashtra, especially during the we can say that the monsoon time period. A very picturesque view that can be seen from this Matheran toy train. Okay, then Kangra Valley Railway. So Kangra Valley Railway, it connects Pathankot in Punjab to Joginder Nagar in Himachal Pradesh. So it is let's say panned in two states, one from Punjab to Himachal Pradesh, right? So Kangra Valley in Himachal Pradesh, it is connecting from Pathankot. Okay, so these are the 5 toy trains. These 2 are still on the list, okay, but not finalized as UNESCO World Heritage Site. These are proposed site. Okay, yes, so these 3 you have to remember especially, and the locations, states, in which state. So this is incorrectly written here. This should have been written in first actually. Fine. Okay, so these were important articles from prelims perspective, and now important captions and quotation, especially from the first article that we have discussed. It can be used in your essay paper. All these 4 essay related to governance, as well as you can use some of them for GS2 paper as well as GS4 paper also. Ethics also has some governance part, civil services and governance part is there, ethics in governance part. So for that purpose also you can use some of these captions that have been used, very good captions. You can use them directly in your essay paper also. Okay, so yes, these were important articles. Try to make use of these articles, try to revise these notes from time to time on the daily basis, right? अगर आपको ये वीडियो पसंद आता है तो श्योरली इसको लाइक कीजिए, कमेंट कीजिए और शेयर कीजिए आपके फ्रेंड्स के साथ में. दिस इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एज if you follow them, these articles, these videos on the daily basis, surely you will be building a very important resource material. Okay, so for getting these videos on the daily basis, subscribe to Lukman IAS channel. Now in addition, if you want to let's say get more information on editorial discussion classes or ED classes, wherein in-depth analysis of men's related issues and articles is done by Ansari sir and team, a perspective building on those issues is done by faculty. For further information on that batch, you can contact Lukman IAS. Thank you.